It looks like it's 5 o'clock, and we should call this meeting to order. Is
Recording in progress.
Tran on calling in, or do we know? I heard he was not going to be here, so.
Not on, but I was told he was joining.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I am going to excuse Tran Hong unless he calls in. And we'll go right on to item number 2, which is public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Nope, seeing none, we'll go to committee business. First item is item A, approval of the minutes, March 3, 2025.
I move approval of the minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to item B, the second amendment of the comprehensive garbage, recyclable, and compostable collection services contract. And I should announce you're all at the land use meeting, and so I'm assuming you're all here for great things to tell us, so welcome. Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Good evening, council members. My name is Rebecca Kovar. I work in the Environmental Services Division of the Public Works Department. And I'm here to discuss the second amendment to our collection contract with WM, which is a lot fewer words than is on the screen. Okay. The question before you is, should the City Council approve Amendment 2 to the Comprehensive Garbage, Recyclables, and Compostable Collection Services Contract? The only thing this amendment does is change the way that the administrative fee is calculated, and which is written down in the contract, so in order to change it, we must actually amend the contract. And the reason it's being changed is to make sure that it is not double collecting on the business and occupancy tax. So it will result in slightly lower rates for the ratepayer. There should be no negative impact to the money the city receives from WM for the contract. We receive an administrative fee monthly, and this will not negatively impact that. And the mayor recommends option 1, which is approval of the amendment. And I am happy to take your questions.
Well, we have a question from Lydia. She has her hand raised. Lydia, go right ahead.
She lowered her hand now.
What's that? You lowered your hand? Okay. Any questions? I guess I have one question. You said business and B&O tax, right?
Yeah,
Which we don't collect in this city.
we do not.
And so we're going to lower it by that much and give everybody a rebate for all the years they've been collecting it?
It actually hasn't been years.
Oh, okay.
There was a single year in which the calculation was slightly off, and it is less than, in general, on average, less than 1 to 2 cents.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of anyone?
No.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I move approval of the proposed amendment to the waste management contract.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go on to item C, high friction surface treatments, 85% design, report and bid authorization. And I would butcher your last name, so I'm not going to say it. Thank you.
Chattopadhyay. Good evening, Chair Jack Doby, committee members, Council President Kuchmer, and the council members. I am Shoma Chattopadhyay. I work for Traffic Division, Public Works Department. I am presenting today systemic high friction surface treatment improvements and requesting for the approval of 85% design status report and authorization to bid. Policy question: should the council authorize staff to proceed to complete the design and bid the high friction surface treatments project and return to the Land Use and Transportation Committee and Council for bid award, further reports, and authorization? Some background information. High friction surfaces are used to reduce runoff the road and other weather crashes by adding friction to the curved road surface and approach to the intersection, improving vehicle traction. The primary purpose of this project is to increase safety along the 6 locations we picked for this project. I will show that in my next slides. This will be accomplished by installing a high friction surface layer over the existing pavement. These are the project location where we have the curved surface, Redondo Way, south, this curved surface, which is west of 13th Avenue South, 10th Avenue Southwest, south of Southwest 335th Street. This one is 372nd Street, curve north of 373rd Street. This one is 16th Avenue South curve, east of SR 99. This one is Warehouser Way, south curve, east of 30th Avenue South. And this one is Milton Road curve, south of 369th Street. Project budget, estimated expenditures: design $100,000, construction $873,000, contingency $87,000, construction management and inspection $100,000. Total cost $1,160,000. Available funding from federal grants: HSIP grant $952,000 and motor vehicle fuel tax fund 102, $208,000. Total $1,160,000. The fund is available. Option considered: authorize staff to complete the design and bid the high friction surface treatment and return to LUTC and council for bid award, further report, and authorization. Second option: do not authorize staff to proceed with this project and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1. I'm ready for the question.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, so exactly what is high friction surface, just for our edification?
High friction surface is the binder of the resins and the bauxite, which is the polished material, which increase the friction of the street.
What are some examples of where we have in the city now, so that I can?
We don't have.
We don't have any?
Yeah, any in the city, but Pierce County and King County is having those, and many DOTs are having those in their curved surface.
Okay. So with it being an overlay, I mean, if it's put on top, does it extend I mean, other than safety, does it extend the lifetime of the street at all, or is it
No,
irrelevant there?
it doesn't extend, but it stays over as long, it depends on, this surface depends on how long it will be there in the pavement. It depends on how much is the traffic volume there and the type of traffic is going through that. It depends on that.
So it'll
it
gradually wear
doesn't-
off?
Doesn't increase the pavement life, but it goes with the pavement life. It stays as long as the pavement life is, depending on the traffic. Like, if it is below 10,000 ADT, it will stay, it will be staying with the pavement life.
So if it's in heavy traffic area, then it may wear out before the pavement life.
We are doing only in one location which has heavy traffic, that is 16th Avenue and 99, 38,000 ADT. That will stay like 10 years. So I don't know how.
It doesn't
when
really.
we have.
Remember, it doesn't really. It does wear, but it doesn't really wear faster than the pavement does.
Okay.
In
All right.
short.
Okay.
If you've been through the new bus loop on Sound Transit's property, the red that they put on the concrete, it's actually that same surface. So
Okay.
it's not on the city streets, and that's not open to traffic yet, but it is that same material.
Okay. How were these locations chosen?
It is with the crash, I think with the accident, high accident location.
So is it on both, the one that I'm most familiar with, if you want to go back to the map?
What is that?
Sorry about being troublesome. Okay, the one that I'm most familiar with would be, I think E, or I believe. And it's a, a 90-degree turn. Is it on both sides of the 90 degrees or just on one or the other?
You were asking me about E?
Yes.
South 372nd? Okay. Yeah, it's both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is it just on one
It's-
side going into the curve, or is it on both sides coming in and coming
Yeah,
out of it?
it's 100 feet from the, we are choosing the tangent. So it will be the curve and some distance from the curve.
It ends up
Both
being a
sides.
couple hundred linear feet of road total.
Yeah.
So it's as you approach, it'll be before you get to the curve itself, and then a departure distance as well. So
Okay.
the exact distances change based on the speeds of each of these.
Okay.
It's past them all. And the goal of this is, these are all, as Shima said, these are all locations where, through the police reporting system, there's a high instance of cars skidding off the road and not making the turn. And this effectively increases the friction to
Okay.
allow that movement to occur.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. First of all, the locations I don't have on the report in the packet. Could you send those to us
Yes,
eventually?
Yeah.
And secondly, I know that the road I'm going to ask about is not our road, but from Highway 18 to I-5, there's the flyover. Is this surface on that road? Do you know?
we have a few more location in our list, but for the first time, we are doing these 6 locations.
Okay,
You're staying on the state highway, Councilman?
right,
It is not.
It is
That's
not.
something different.
okay. Do studies indicate that this does reduce the rate of accidents on the roads that this is applied to?
This will reduce the speed from the friction and reduce the accident. It says that from the other papers that 75% accident reduction, and for the actually for the slick road it is 75%, and the other accident it is 30%.
And with ice and snow, if the roads are treated, does that impact the life?
No,
Expected-
it doesn't with the snow plow.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I move to forward option 1 to the April 15, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And now we'll go to item D, SR 99, Federal Way High School Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project Acceptance.
Why is this not going away? There we go. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So annoying. I hate this bar. There we go. There we go. All right. Okay, sorry about that. All right, good evening. Councilman Dovey, LUTC committee members, and chair, fellow or other council members. I'm Jason Kenny. I'm with the Traffic Division and Public Works Department, and I'm here to present the project acceptance of the SR 99 Federal Way High School Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. There we go. So the policy question before you is, should the council accept the SR 99 Federal Way High School pedestrian safety improvements that were constructed by the South Sound Fencing LLC company as complete? So this action is needed as a requirement. The city council must accept the work as complete to meet the Washington State Department of Revenue, Economic Security Department, and Department of Labor and Industries requirements. And here is a picture of the installed fencing on the median of SR 99 in between South 304th and South 308th Street in front of Federal Way High School. The financial summary for this project, the fencing contract was authorized a maximum of $46,986. The construction contract ended up being $43,986. And so therefore, it was below the maximum authorized contract amount of $3,000. And the options considered tonight are option 1, approve the final acceptance of the SR 99 Federal Way High School Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project constructed by South Sound Fencing, or option 2, do not approve and provide direction of staff, to staff.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. It looks nicer than I thought it was going to look, so it's, has anyone jumped over it or tried to do anything not nice to it?
So far, not to my knowledge. I actually reached out to Federal Way Public Schools before the meeting to see if they had any comments or feedback, whatever. They were obviously on spring break this past week, so the only comment I got was in general, everything that the liaison for Federal Way Public Schools said, that it was all positive so far.
So have you had any complaints from any citizens who've,
Nope, not to my knowledge.
awesome, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Walsh?
I'll just say that it looks better than I expected also. I was pleased with it. You know, it's sad that it needs to be there, but it looks better than expected, so. And so with that, I move to forward the proposed SR 99 FWHS pedestrian safety improvements constructed by South Sound Fencing LLC. The April 15, 2025 consent agenda for acceptance is complete.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item E, Military Road South Preservation Project Acceptance.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members, council members. My name is Japan. I'm the civil engineer for the city of Federal Way, and I'm presenting the South Military Road South Preservation Project acceptance to committee. The project locates on Military Road South from South city limits to South 320th Street. The policy question is, should the City Council accept the Military Road South Preservation Project constructed by Icon Materials as complete? Prior to the release of retaining on a public works construction project, the City Council must accept the work as complete to meet the requirements of the State Department of Revenue, Employment, Securities, and Labor and Industries. The Military Road South Preservation Project constructed by Icon Material is complete. The final construction contract amount is $863,562. This is $188,444 below the maximum authorized contract amount. The options presented to the committees are: 1, authorize final acceptance of the Military Road South Preservation Project constructed by Icon Materials in the amount of $863,562 as complete, or 2, do not authorize final acceptance of the Military Road South Preservation Project and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option 1. Staff is available for any questions you may have.
I don't see any. Do I have a motion?
Yes. I move to forward option 1 to the April 15, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now we'll move on to item F, the 348th Street NHS Preservation Project acceptance.
Chair Dovey, committee members, council members, at this time, I would like to present the South 348 NHS Preservation Project acceptance to committee. The project locations on South 348 Street between 9th Avenue South and SR 99. The policy question is, should the City Council accept the South 348 NHS Preservation Project constructed by Mines Resources as complete? The South 348 NHS Preservation Project constructed by Mines Resources is complete. The final construction contract amount is $774,480. This is $113,989 below the maximum authorized contract amount. The options presented to the committees are: 1, authorize final acceptance of the South 348th Street NHS Preservation Project constructed by Mines Resources in the amount of $774,480 as complete. Or 2, do not authorize final acceptance of the South 348th Street NHS Preservation Project and provides direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, just a quick question. On the $143,989 below the authorized maximum amount, how much of that was the contingency fund? And how much is how are we doing on calculating things
I think the contingency for the project is 10%, which is around $83,000. This is 100% funding,
Okay.
funding through NHS and PSOC, so we don't get reimbursed for that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I do have a follow-up question. This is two projects in a row that have come $100,000 under budget. Something going on in the economy that we're not aware of, or we just thought it was going to cost more? Or what made us get this to where it is today?
Not that we're complaining.
Yeah, and like Jeff said, both of these were grant funded, so this isn't necessarily net savings to the city. It's net savings to like grant agencies for us doing a good job. But that being said, there's a couple of things. One is both of these projects are preservation projects, so there's assumptions made on how many sections of dig outs in the existing road need to be made, which we don't really find out until we mill off the surface. So those are all unit quantity priced. So when we open it up, you know, if we, I don't want to say get lucky, but effectively, and the amount of dig outs we have to do is less than what was anticipated, we pay per unit. So we end up basically purchasing less units. So that's what happened, I think, on both of these projects.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I move to forward option 1 of the April 15, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go to item G, the 20th Avenue Street vacation early council briefing. Mr. Smith.
Yes, good evening. So good evening, Ken Smith with the Public Works Department. Good evening, council members, committee members. I'm here to present for the 20th Avenue Street Vacation Early Council Briefing. And the policy question is, should City Council authorize staff to proceed with review of the 20th Avenue South Street Vacation application? So just a little background, this is the 20th Avenue Street Vacation that is from South 336th Street to South 341st Place. This is a part of the OMF South Sound Transit Project, which includes a proposed addition of 18th Place South as an extension of that road that doesn't exist now as a compensation for losing the 20th Avenue. Just a little extra background, essentially 20th Avenue needs to go away as part of the project because it would run right through essentially where they need to put the facility. For the options considered, option 1, authorize staff to begin review of the street vacation petition, and also direct staff to work with the petitioner to host a public briefing open house on the right-of-way vacation, or do not authorize, and the mayor's recommendation is option 1. And I'll answer any questions.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So is 341st Place, so is that road going to be improved so that vehicles can, right now if you drive on that road, you've got cars parked on both sides, it's very narrow. So would that be improved?
I believe there's not any change for 341st Place other than an extension of 21st Avenue that actually allows for connection between what gets lost with the connection of 20th, but not as far as improving. Potentially there is something in the works with the full OMF South project to resurface the road, depending on how their access comes in, but
So I
not
imagine
as far as widening the road.
that's going to be the road that the yogurt place, their delivery trucks come and go, because they won't have 21st anymore. So,
I believe it's actually, I don't think we've decided on that. It is probably the right way to say that.
okay. But if it needs to be improved, then who's responsible for improving it?
It would be the applicant.
It would be what?
It would be Sound Transit.
Okay. And when would we make that decision?
It'd be as a part of their review of their permit applications.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
So would 21st be coming in right behind the Masonic Lodge to a library property then, or?
Yes, it would connect to where the Elenos is.
Okay,
There's a stormwater pond for WashDOT that's in that vicinity, so it connects kind of right where that pond is, but in between there and I forget
Okay.
what that business is called.
all right. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
So Elenos is they're next to I-5, so
Correct.
that's why I was asking about 341st, because,
So what would happen is if we lose 20th Avenue, it becomes a non-conforming dead end. So a portion of 21st would need to be extended to eliminate that non-conformance.
and what is nonconformance mean?
Essentially that it does not meet code to be a dead end for that long of a stretch. So they need an actual additional way to leave or have access.
And that isn't something we know right now?
They have access now from 20th as an additional way in and out, but with the vacation of 20th Avenue, they don't have that access anymore of an additional point. So they would
Right.
need 21st Avenue extended in order to eliminate that.
All right, thanks.
You okay?
All right. I move to forward option 1 to the April 15, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, we're gonna go to South 288th Street Road, Diet Phase 1, project acceptance.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Need some water?
I have some here.
Turn your mic off.
That's what happens when you go to Washington DC, right? Okay, you're up.
All right, awesome. Good evening. I'm John Strong, civil engineer. Today we're talking about South 288th Road Diet Project Phase 1 acceptance. The question is, should the council accept the South 288th Phase 1 by Icon as complete? Our max authorized contract amount was $1,989.45. Final construction contract amount was $846,765.13, which remained $155,224.32 under budget. We have two options. One is to authorize the final acceptance of the South 288th Street Road Diet Phase 1 project constructed, or do not authorize final acceptance and provide direction for staff. Mayor recommends option 1. Any questions?
I don't see any questions.
I move to forward option 1 to the April 15, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to step out for
You,
just a
you
minute.
step, and we'll, since we won't have a committee of two, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'm told that the mayor can step in and make, is that true?
I believe in the absence of a quorum, I think it's the council president that steps in. I'll
Okay.
confirm that, but I believe that's right.
Okay, we'll continue on, so everybody can do their presentation. We're going to go on to item I, 288th Street Road Diet Phase 2 bid award.
Yes, okay. So this is for the Phase 2 authorization to award. So the question is, should the city council authorize staff to award the South 288th Street Road Diet Phase 2 project to ACI, who was our lowest responsible bidder? Project location is on 288th, of course, from Military to Pack Highway. We got 8 bids on March 7th. The lowest responsive was ACI with a bid total of $2,324,324. Here's a list of our funding. We have our REIT, our traffic mitigation impact fees, and our TIB grant, which comes out to about $2.9 million. Our estimated expenditures comes out to, just $2.9 million as well, resulting in a $20,000 difference of extra funds that we have. So we have two options. One is to award South 288th Street Road Diet Phase 2 project to ACI, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $2,324,324, with a contingency of $232,432, with a maximum contract of $2,556,756. Or option two is to reject all bids and authorize or provide direction for staff. Any questions?
I don't see any questions. Do I have
Move option ones.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. It moves forward, and now we will go to item J, an ordinance on my favorite thing, accessory dwelling unit code amendment. I think we have one of these on every meeting. So this is great stuff.
Hello, LUTC, council members. My name is Andrew Leon, and I'm going to be presenting on the accessory dwelling unit code amendment. So the policy question is, should the city council adopt the proposed text amendments to Title 19 of the Federal Way Revised Code relating to accessory dwelling units? Just as a little background on the legislative requirements spurring this code amendment, House Bill 1337 passed through the state legislature in 2023, and it required cities to remove barriers to the construction of accessory dwelling units. The city of Federal Way did partially address these code changes in 2023, but there are still some required changes that need to be made, including allowing at least 2 ADUs on all lots where single-family dwellings are allowed, limiting impact fees for ADUs, removing ADU entrance location requirements, allowing ADUs to be located in any existing structure, and reducing parking requirements within a half a mile of a major transit stop. Just as a brief summary of some of the amendments proposed here, impact fees, except for ADUs, can't exceed 50% of those for single-family residences. The proposed change has been added to reflect that in Federal Way Revised Code 19.91.060 and for transportation impact fees, and 19.92.060 for park impact fees. And again, that's just a very narrowly defined, they can't be more than 50% of single-family dwellings. As far as development standards for ADUs, there are updates to the land use tables in the single-family residential zone and the suburban estate zone, and those are, I did that backwards, but 19-200, 180, and 19-195, 180 respectively. And basically, the major changes there are to allow up to 2 ADUs on each property, removing aesthetic requirements, so that would be like requiring them to match the form of the existing house. Also removing like entrance location requirements, that kind of thing. ADUs have to be allowed in any existing structure, including some non-conforming structures, and I covered the entrance location as well. And the other major change is to parking standards. This applies to ADUs in all zones. So basically, no parking, we can't require parking. Applicants can propose parking, but we can't require it within a half a mile of a major transit stop. And that buffer zone is increased from a half a mile under our current code. And there's also a note that allowed the city discretion to allow extra parking if there was a parking study, but the state legislature is pretty clear that we can't do that, so we've removed that note. As far as the adoption process, this did go through Planning Commission public hearing in February 19th, and we're planning on sending it to City Council next week on April 15th with the second reading on May 6th. So as far as criteria for development regulation amendments, we found that it meets all three of these criteria because it does provide additional flexibility for property owners to develop their lots, and also improves the housing situation in the city by allowing potentially more housing through additional ADUs. So a recommendation was provided by the Planning Commission to approve the amendment, and the mayor also proposed adoption of the ordinance. Now, opening it for questions.
Start with Council President.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Leon. I'm a little bit confused. So you're talking about ADU, which are attached dwelling units.
It's accessory dwelling units.
So it could be either detached or attached.
Correct.
So if it's an attached, okay, so let me ask you, go back to the one on parking spaces here. So I'm getting a little confused on that too, because you said, because this says no parking spaces are allowed within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. And you just said that you didn't have to require parking spaces.
So I probably could have written this a bit more clearly. We can't require them to have parking spaces.
Yeah, I think you need to rewrite that because that's not right.
Okay, so the actual
something
amendment
different.
doesn't say it like this. It actually says that 0 parking spaces required.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well,
So I apologize for the.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so if it's within 1/2 mile of a major transit, does that mean any transit stop? You're saying major transit stop.
Right, so the major transit stops are defined in the House bill. So it's going to be, as far as it pertains to the city of Federal Way, it'll be the light rail stations. So that'll be the one
Oh, those are
downtown,
the okay.
Steel Lake.
So it's not like a
Starlight.
bus stop, it's a major.
It is some bus stops. So basically, any bus stop that serves or has service more frequently than every 15 minutes would require it. And also anything in an HOV lane. So that's basically any bus stop on State Route 99.
Okay, so I got that. So now, when you're talking about an attached dwelling unit, it used to be, I'm not sure when it changed, but it used to be that if you had if you converted an area into a ADU within your house, but you couldn't have a stove in it because then you wouldn't get financing. You can now have a stove in an attached dwelling unit, or did that go away, or?
Yes, yes. You can't have in fact, you must have cooking facilities.
Cooking
For
facilities,
something
yeah.
to qualify as an accessory dwelling unit.
Wow.
So I'll be honest, I don't know from the financing perspective how that's been worked out in the meantime, but from the city's perspective, you have to have that cooking unit in order for it to qualify as an ADU.
So maybe that all happened with HB 1337.
Perhaps,
when they
or
started.
or in response, the financing might have changed in response to the new bills that require certain things.
Okay. So you could have an ADU within the house and then a detached dwelling unit outside the house.
Correct.
Detached ADU.
You could have one attached ADU and one detached ADU.
Or 2 attached and 2 detached. It's any combination.
Or two detached, or two.
2 attached, correct. Any combination of attached
Or
and
there,
detached.
just
that
so long as it equals 2.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Daniel?
Yeah, 2 quick questions. The first one is, so we are saying 2, in the future, is that increased to 6? I know we've heard that talk about. What is the maximum amount of a dwelling units can we build?
So as far as the accessory dwelling unit amendment is concerned, it is 2. We are basically doing the minimum required to meet the state legislative laws here. There is another bill coming through to address middle housing that is 4 to 6 units per acre or per lot, and that's a little different. ADUs can count towards that 4 to 6 units, but you wouldn't be able to have like 6 ADUs.
Gotcha. And then what is, just out of curiosity, what is the difference between an ADU and what will be built in the future? What is the distinguishing factor that makes it an ADU, not a small home or whatever terminology you want to use for it?
So just by and large, it's that they are accessory to a separate primary use, whether that's like a duplex or a single-family residence or even a fourplex in some situations. Whereas if you had just like a small apartment complex or a sixplex or something, that would be the primary use, if that makes sense.
A little bit, but I'm sure when we get to the next set of
Yeah, I
conversations.
think that'll be explained a little bit more in the middle housing.
Gotcha.
I guess I'd just say one thing, council member, just to maybe help qualify that too. I actually don't think there's much difference between an accessory dwelling unit and a primary dwelling unit in terms of a single-family home. It's essentially a second single-family home that's accessory to the first single-family home, if that's a way that makes more sense in your brain. Sometimes it does in mine.
Yeah, yes, it does, and I know it's gonna change probably in the future again anyway, so it's gonna, I'll keep simple Gumby on that one. But, and then my last one is, if someone does new construction, they can build a primary and automatically add the 2 ADUs at this moment in time, right?
As soon as the amendment is passed, obviously, they could build a single-family residence with 2 ADUs attached or detached, or however they want to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So what is the minimum and maximum square feet of a accessory dwelling unit that is allowed?
The maximum is 1,000 square feet. It looks like our code does not currently have a minimum.
Does every accessory unit need a separate bedroom, or could they be a studio?
I believe they could be a studio as long as they had facilities for cooking food and also like a bathroom. That space could be used as an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, they just need facilities for sleeping. So that doesn't have to necessarily be a separate room. You could have a bed that comes down off the wall, if that makes sense. That would count.
Okay. And if they're located half a mile away from a major transit stop in Federal Way, then we can require parking.
If they are within that half mile, we cannot require parking.
Right.
If they're more than a half mile, then it is 1 space per unit required.
And so for the primary unit, it's 2 spaces required?
I don't have the land use table printed out, but I believe that is correct, yes.
And are these owned by the property owner, or are they owned by the people that are using perhaps the accessory dwelling units?
Generally, ADUs are owned by the same property owner as the primary property owner. We can't require that to be the resident or the owner of the property who has to live there. That is another thing that 1337 covered, and that's a thing that we addressed a couple of years ago in 2023.
Yeah, and again, in the next set of ordinances, the 1110 ordinance, which also has the unit lot subdivision ordinance, that will provide a mechanism where you can essentially split the ADUs into their own separate parcels, and you could actually own the unit on the same parent lot, if that makes sense. So there will be a mechanism quite soon in the city, assuming council approves it, for home ownership of the ADU specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if there was a contractor who was going to build a home and at that time, at the same time of construction of the home, construct the ADUs, are they separate building permits or are they the same building permit?
I believe that would be the same building permit. It would basically be 1 building permit for the development on the lot.
Even if it's detached?
I believe so. Is that correct? Separate building permits.
If it's detached, but the same building permit if it's attached?
I'll be even more decisive and say that's usually the right answer.
You're not supposed to make me laugh. I mean, it's, all right, thank you.
Council President?
Thank you. So, so back to, if you have the detached ADU and you've separated it out, have you done a subdivide of the property so that the person can then be the owner of the
So that is something that you will be able to do if and when the city passes the unit lot subdivision ordinance, which will be coming to you in a couple weeks. Currently, there is not a mechanism to do that other than condominiumization. And condominiumization is you don't gain title to the underlying property. You own the unit, but not the property beneath it, if that makes sense, in a condo structure. So,
Okay. So in other words, this summer, you think that this might go into effect this summer?
The statutory
Possibly.
deadline for us to comply with that is by the end of June, so.
Wow. So how do you expect this to change the face of our city? Well, do you expect much of a
Let
change?
me look to the policymakers to answer that question. AJ, perhaps you could answer that better than I can.
So basically, all the amendments that are kind of rolling through the pipeline right now are kind of intended to result in a denser development. So that could result in single-family zones having sort of more
Okay.
multifamily feel to it.
So if you had enough property and you wanted to have something larger than 1,000 square feet, you definitely would have to subdivide.
Not so again, I know this kind of feels like a two-step dance here because I keep on talking about the next set of ordinances that you guys are going to see soon, but you could build a duplex or a triplex or something like that if you want something over 1,000 feet that has multiple units in it, or you will be able to do that once the 1110 ordinance gets passed.
No, I mean a separate unit, not the primary unit. The primary unit would then be separated from, the property would be separated so that you could build something more than 1,000 square feet on a secondary lot.
You can never have an ADU that's over 1,000 square feet, but you
So
can.
it wouldn't be an ADU then, it
It
would
wouldn't
then
be
be
an
a
ADU, but
separate
it would
house.
be something else. It could be a separate house, it could be a fourplex. You could have a fourplex that's divided into 4 unit lots, and each one of them could be 1,500 square feet, if that makes sense.
Boy, you know, when we get to the next subdivision, maybe some pictures would be really helpful. Because I've always thought of a fourplex as being 1 unit, but it could be more than one
It
building.
could be 4 attached units, but with the unit lot subdivision, you're going to be able to split that one building essentially into 4 unit lots.
Wow, confusing. Okay.
Indeed. We've spent quite a
I'm
lot of
sure
time
you-
internally thinking about it.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. So, a lot of our area is not sewered, it's on septic. If you're going to have something over 1,000 square feet, it could still be septic, as long as the county accepts, as long as it's in a drain field.
So
and it
one,
works.
one of, and again, this is a preview to the next bill. One of the exceptions to cities having to allow for up to 6 units on a single lot.
Okay.
One of the exceptions is if it doesn't have sufficient access to sewer.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. So you could have a piece of property, I'm getting really confusing here.
It's
You
all
could
right.
subdivide it. You could have a separate building lot, right? And then
6.
you could have an ADU within the existing residence, and then you could have a detached ADU, as long as you had enough property, correct?
So what the proposal that's going to be coming to council will be is that the max number you can get is 6. So
Wow.
how you get to 6 is
However
up
you
to
want.
you. You could have, for instance, you could have a fourplex, and then you could have 2 ADUs.
Okay,
Right?
so the detached ADU, does that have to be on, how does, for sewer, for a detached, can that be on a septic, or does it have to be on a sewer?
I do not believe, and AJ, correct me if we're wrong, that there's any exception to permitting 2 ADUs that's related to if you don't have sewer service.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think as
Okay.
long as the septic,
Okay, so
the county
let's,
would sign off on it.
I will say, that, however, one thing, the septic's approved by the county, I believe.
Yeah, that's the county.
Speaking correctly.
Yeah,
And
we're
so it's
getting into
entirely
county.
possible that the county might say that your 2 ADUs plus whatever building you have, you're not going to be able to do that on a septic system, or you're going to have to significantly upgrade your septic system
right,
to allow
yeah,
that.
well,
So-
obviously, I think you'd have to do that. But one other thing, okay, so let's get into, what we're having is a lot more home care businesses in our city, you know, so you actually could have a piece of property, and they could separate it out, and you could have different complexes on this piece of property that's currently a single-family home. As long as the lot was big enough, and you could make that into a business for home health care or for senior housing or something like that?
That's a little bit more dependent because, so our code has different definitions for things like senior housing or nursing care facilities, those types of facilities that provide health care. Those are often a different use type than just a triplex. It might be, a triplex is like a standard dwelling unit, but those facilities like convalescent centers, nursing homes,
Okay.
fit into different categories. So usually there's different requirements that are associated with them.
Okay, so I'm thinking like a business person here. I'm thinking that we have some engineering firms in our city that might be seeing a lot new customers for all of these new things that people might want to develop? Would that be a fair statement?
It's definitely possible. Again, I'd look to the planners who probably have a better handle on that than I do.
It's kind of, it is possible, and it's more or less the intent of most of the bills coming through the legislature is to increase building.
Sure. The reason I'm saying that is because I've been seeing on the internet where they say, gee, we'll bring in a detached ADU, we'll do all the work for you. You don't even have to lift a finger, all you have to do is pay for it. Is that something like that's going to happen in our city?
Potentially, I couldn't say what individual property owners would want to do, but that is probably potentially something that could happen.
And that would include engineering and so on, or?
Probably.
Well, I'm really, it's going to be interesting. Good luck.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, it seems to me as though, a lot of the stuff on septic, I mean, by the time that if you have to expand the drain field and trying to find space for the house and the drain field, it seems like that it's going to reduce that down a lot. And so even though technically you can, in practicality, I'd say with a whole lot of those, you won't be able to.
I think that's true, and that'll also be true for parcels that have critical areas on them, like wetlands, streams, buffers, that type of stuff. Those will also practically have way fewer options to densify those properties and to put more units on them.
And then if an area has an HOA that says no, that would exclude that. So as I see it, it'll have some impact on the city, but it's not going to make the city look entirely different. It'll be, some areas here and there will have it, but between septic requirements and HOAs, it cuts out, half of the city or something like that? I don't know. So
It's
I'm
definitely
looking out there at
significant.
Keith, just.
Combine those two with critical areas, and that's a relatively significant swath of the city for sure.
So I don't think it's going to remake the city. There'll be some changes, but I don't think it's going to be a remake. So, anyway.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So let's say that someone is going to buy a piece of property, they put the primary structure on, and then they add 2 additional structures. Are the impact fees, are they based on square footage of all 3 structures or just the primary structure?
I believe they are charged individually.
That's correct. They're per, actually, it's tied to the building permit issuance, so this gets back to the original question about whether you need 1 or more building permits. But they're tied to the building permit, and in that situation, regardless of whether it's separate building permits for the ADU from the house or whether they're all covered under the same building permit, the fees for the single-family house are going to be 100% of what's authorized. The fees for each ADU are going to be 50% of that per square footage calculation.
Okay. And septic versus sewer discussion. I was just reminded of this yesterday when I drove by this area over by Adelaide Elementary. There's an existing neighborhood. It's been there for many, many years. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, some new homes came in to that area. And the houses across the street, the little tiny 2-way street, were required or will need to go on sewer, even though they were on septic, and they need to go on sewer because of the new construction of the new homes. So how would, since that's happened in one neighborhood, I could see it happening in other neighborhoods. Is there a way we could protect our existing property owners from that happening to them? Because I got a lot of phone calls from the homes that were told that they had to move to sewer, which is extremely expensive. And the only reason they had to do it was because of the new construction of, I think there were going to be 3 homes, and now I think that there's 5 or 6.
Okay, so we hadn't really considered that as a part of this amendment. Again, we're trying to keep this to the minimum of what is required to meet state law. Yeah, we didn't address that in this amendment.
I can tell you what'll happen. Yeah, when the sewer is extended down the street, this has been this way for as long as 50 years maybe. So the sewer is extended, and then the home gets an area charge for that sewer. that's then available. So they don't have to connect, but they do have to, they are part of a ULID, Utility Local Improvement District. So for the 3 homes that are being built, then there's a payback because they've extended the sewer. Now, it could be paid back over a 20-year period. So they have to go in and talk to the sewer district about it. But that we have a lot of homes that the sewer has gone down the street, but they've never connected, which is pretty interesting because when they go to sell, then they find out, oh my gosh, I have to connect now.
They have to connect when they sell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just when they sell, because they won't get financing otherwise,
Right.
yeah.
Which is, so they still have to eventually connect at some point.
Eventually, they do. But, and you're right, in the meantime, they do have the area charge, which is separate from the connection charge.
I mean, I just would like to protect our property owners as they are now so that, and I do realize, being on the Board of Health, for the years I was on the Board of Health, I know that King County would like to see all septic gone, if possible, and especially cities, people living in a city like Federal Way to be on sewer. I understand that. But I also know we were impacted. We were going to have to put a house, go from septic to sewer. Back in 1989, it was extremely expensive, and we ended up selling the house and moving. And so I know that this is a negative impact for some property owners. I'm just trying to see how we could protect them.
Can I just butt in there? It's not the city that requires them to hook up the sewer. We have no jurisdiction over that.
Yeah,
do we?
I was going to mention something along those lines, that this is largely a county/Lake Haven thing, because Lake Haven's the sewer provider and the county's the one who has the authority over the on-site septic system. So the city's by far the smallest player, if we even have a role at all in that discussion. I do remember when we were discussing comprehensive plan amendments for last year, when we were going through our update, there was consideration about adding language to our comp plan saying that would have been more strict about requiring or wanting more houses to have to connect to sewer. And if I remember correctly, Keith, did that get taken out? It stayed in. So there's language in our comprehensive plan that basically says that the city's goal is to move things towards sewer, preferentially over on-site septic. So, but other than that, the city's role is relatively limited.
And I've always,
There's nothing we could do to protect property owners from having, with new construction coming in, potentially having to move to sewer. Right.
I've always thought that when we were in DC and arguing on behalf of the city, that we should be arguing on behalf of the sewer district as well to get the grants. Because when we open up the roads, we should be putting the sewer lines in at the same time, getting a grant so that it's being paid for by the federal government. But, I mean,
I do have one question, and maybe you could dig into this a little bit more. Councilmember Walsh brought up covenants in certain areas where the housing are. So if the covenants in, say, the Ridge or Twin Lakes or Marine Hills say that you cannot put ADUs in, then those areas are totally off and they can't add any. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So just because the city has to allow up to 2 ADUs,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the city has any role or can do anything about private covenants that exist that would prohibit them. So those are still all effective.
And I believe in another land use meeting many moons ago, we had a discussion about covenants, and the city doesn't really keep tabs on those, correct? So,
That's correct. There's extremely limited situations in which covenants are at all relevant to the city's review of projects.
so if somebody wanted to do an ADU and they don't know their covenants, and they come in to do this, how's the mechanism so they can find out what their covenants actually say, so they don't think they can put 2 ADUs in their backyard and they really can't.
Well,
How do we police that, or how do we?
I'll start by saying that when I was in private practice before I came here, I've had that discussion many times with people who were midway through building whatever building it was that they weren't authorized to build, and then the HOA cracked down. But with that caveat, the answer is, when you're buying the property in the first place, the title documents are going to include the HOA covenants that apply to your property. And absent reading those carefully, or absent talking to your HOA board or your architectural review committee, or whatever that is, absent that, the homeowner is not going to know. So it's a little bit on them to read the 45 pages of covenants and figure it out, unfortunately.
Okay.
Otherwise, they get a knock on the door and the nasty gram in the mail that says cease and desist. Otherwise,
Right.
yeah.
But do we, in our planning department, when someone comes in, is that part of our checklist to tell people, yes, you can, but you better go check your covenants? I mean, should we maybe have that as like step number one? I mean,
So that's certainly something that we could look into. Certain projects do require applicants to give us title reports, so. We don't want to do
okay,
title reports.
I'm
for building
just,
permits, though.
again, I'm
It's
just,
a bit onerous.
we're making all these state rules and we're doing all the things to be, compliant. But I guarantee you, most people are not going to know if they can or can't. And and then they start doing it and then they find out, oh, I can't build 2 of these on my
I
backyard.
mean, the absolute, and this is not my call, but the absolute most that we could do is include a check your covenants type comment. We don't want to go any further to say, you're in an area where the covenants say blah, 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 and that means this. We definitely can't do
Yeah,
that.
I'm not advocating that we be the judge and tell them how to do it, but it should be somewhere that somebody needs to know they have to look.
Or simply making a recommendation that they check their covenants.
Okay. Councilmember Walsh, is that?
Yeah, okay, that was what.
Councilmember Honda?
When we purchased our property and built our home in the Ridge, we had our attorney read the covenants because it's very tiny, tiny print and hundreds of pages, if I remember correctly. And I have them at home somewhere, but I would think, at least for my HOA, it's probably similar to other HOAs. And there's really no way anyone would go through and read all of that. So I would hope that they would have an attorney or a real estate investor involved so that they know what's involved.
Well, you would hope they would, but
You would hope,
most
yeah.
people don't even know how to balance their bank account sometimes. Anyway, okay, do I have a motion?
I move to forward option, hold on, no, we're on the wrong one here. This is,
item
yeah.
J.
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on April 15, 2025.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Linda was taking.
Yep, okay. A lot of people want to put fiber in Federal Way, it looks like.
The doctor says we're supposed to have more fiber, so.
Yeah.
Does that make the sewage systems work better?
Well, the 288 diet.
Yeah, and we now have more sewers, so.
Okay. Good evening, council members. I am Leonard Spadoni with Development Services, part of Public Works. I am presenting Hyperfiber of Washington, a fiber franchise ordinance that is asking to be part of the City of Federal Way. The policy question is, should the City of Federal Way grant Hyperfiber Washington a franchise ordinance to place fiber, communications, and other related equipment in the right-of-way of Federal Way? Hyperfiber of Washington has requested a franchise from the City of Federal Way to place fiber optic cable and apprentices in the city-owned and controlled right-of-ways. They have paid their $5,000 deposit for administrative consideration and staff time. In terms of this franchise, it would be a period of 10 years, which is typical of most fiber franchises previously existing. Options to consider: recommending adoption of the proposed Hyperfiber of Washington franchise ordinance and forwarding to the City Council for a first reading. Option 2, do not adopt the proposal ordinance and provide direction to the staff. The mayor's recommendation: forward the Hyperfiber of Washington franchise ordinance to the City Council meeting on April 15th for first reading. Do we have questions?
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Do we know where they want to put the fiber, or does this allow them to put it anywhere within the city?
It allows them to put it anywhere in the city, and they have come forward to wanting to be aggressive and start putting in, but we'd keep their exposure limited until we saw how well they worked and played well with others. To make sure that we got restoration up, that the citizens were happy of how they progressed their work.
So they've already put some fiber?
They have not put any
Oh,
in fiber
okay.
in Federal Way, but what they're proposing is to put it extensively through the city, but we would limit their size of exposure at the beginning. Keep their projects down to a minimum, so that way then we can control get them, if there's things that they would like them to do better, their restoration, their addressing the public concerns, keeping their work sites clean, that kind of stuff. But instead of getting so far out ahead of it that we'd have hard time pulling it back in.
What cities are they currently in?
Currently, they are in Ocean Shores in Washington. Their corporation is originally out of Colorado, and then they're down in Florida and some of the other big states.
So we're their first Washington city?
No, they're in Ocean Shores,
Oh, besides Ocean Shores.
as
Wha-
far as I know from the last
Okay.
meeting I had with them.
Why would they pick us to be their second city?
It seems to be that because the way the expansion, I think some of it is with our infrastructure is aging. And I think some of why we're seeing a big influx of fiber companies applying for ordinances. I think I have two more that the Easy was last recently, and then Hyperfiber, and then I think Fat Beam Fiber is coming right behind it. And yeah, it seems to be a preference. I'd have to bet with the ADU advancement, with light rail coming in, our whole city's kind of developing out of infancy to more of a middle-aged city.
So the $5,000 that they've paid is just to do this part of it,
This part of it.
and then when they actually apply to put fiber in, then they have permit fees that they have to pay?
Correct. Then we'll go into regular right-of-way permits and the advancement fees.
Okay, thank you.
Council President?
Well, EJ, I'm wondering, when we get the roads torn up, we have the water going in, water lines going in, and we tear them up for whatever we're doing, and then we tear them. Is there any way we can coordinate all this?
In short, we do. So the default position for a fiber or any soft communication is that it needs to be outside of the road prism. So it's typically, we have a spot designated that's actually back a sidewalk. So the 2 feet behind the back of the sidewalk is where the default location for any sort of soft utility, including fiber, is. So in theory, they shouldn't be ripping up the roads. Now, that being said, they obviously have to cross roads at intersections, and they have to there are areas where Lake Haven has fire hydrants is an easy example, and they may have to jog out or move for one reason or another, and they can't run it there. But for existing utilities, like sticking with the Lake Haven example, we do coordinate those. So anytime, whether it's an overlay project or a road widening or whatever, we reach out to the utilities and coordinate with them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Daniel?
Do you know if they do micro trenching or normal trenching? Or
They have talked about that. I know that they also will do some direct boring, and when you still have problems with that, with locates of storm sewer. We have a couple that we're dealing with now that went through them. That micro trenching is what they have talked about doing primarily, but every job site, every length. Every section will have its own little issues. Might be an old growth tree, there might be something, a historical area that they've got to jog around that's not going to allow it, or they've got to there's just too much congestion in the utility. So to say that they are all going towards microfiber, micro trenching because it is less restoration, but we haven't limited on how they have to restore other than they have to restore.
So it just depends on what the situation allows for.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, with all these microfiber companies coming in, I mean, are they divvying up the city among themselves? Or are some of them doing the same thing in the same areas? Or can they use the same conduit? Or how is all that?
I believe that they'll own their own conduit and they can use the same designated pathway. How is divided is how they sell to their customers and get clients. With so many coming in, I think we're all going to see a little bit of growth, or at least interest, because in my little brain, I would also think that there'd be 6 fiber companies going down the same pole, and this guy's on this one, my neighbor's on another one. That part, I don't know, it's so infant, I don't know how it will be divided out.
So
I think what you're seeing is a lot of the same conversation we had with the small cell stuff a couple of years ago, where there's a whole bunch of companies that are coming in. The market is fairly saturated with small companies that are doing fiber, and the cost to get to this point is fairly low. First, the cost to actually deploy the system in the field, to go out and actually install it. You know, and one of the things where we are limited is fiber is considered part of the spectrum of internet at the federal level. So we as a city don't necessarily have the authority to say, you can have this service area, you can have that service area. We can franchise the city, but we can't subdivide the city effectively into certain areas. There is a consortium of cities that we're not involved in that are looking at the concept of, can a city put out effectively an RFP to have one utility provider come in and be the internet provider, similar to like Tacoma. I mean, their system is much older. That's not something we've really explored, but there are a couple that are effectively setting up a city franchise, or considering setting up a city franchise and trying to run that to ground if that's something that's viable.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, see no other questions, do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on April 15, 2025.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody would like on Councilman McDaniel?
Yeah, 2 items. One, I'd like an update on permitting system. We've got all the permitting system. I know that we've got most of it done for the mechanical and stuff, but I know that the single-family and multifamily is one that was in the play. I'd like to know an update on that with all these ordinances we're changing. And the second one, I don't know if it's goes to this one of Parks, but there's been some communication back and forth with Keith on licensing requirements for medical treatment and mental health crisis centers. Something that's gone back and forth a little bit. I'd like to have a deeper conversation if that's something that's viable.
Yeah, that's for here.
What's that?
That should be here rather than Parks.
Okay,
Okay.
wasn't sure on that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll discuss that when we put the next agenda together. Councilman Hondo?
Yes, I would like to get an update on the old Target property, where they are with their investors and how they're moving forward. Last time I talked to Keith about it, they were still looking for investors, but I know there's a time limit. And how much money they've given the city for the property at this point, I'd like to find that out. And if we could, when we talk about that, if we could talk about how it compares to an investor going into Sound Transit, because now there's 2 lots for sale for Sound Transit to build housing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just missed the first part of your sentence. You wanted to see.
To see how they compare.
Oh, how they compare, okay.
Yeah, because now there's competition.
Can I ask clarification? You want an update on the Trent project?
Right.
Not the old Target building? Well, I mean,
Well, right,
that's the
that
location.
property.
Yeah, that's the location.
The old
but let's-
Target building remains demolished.
Yeah, you want an update on the progress with the Trent project?
Right, that's old property.
Okay.
And then I would like to take this opportunity, today I was very excited as I drove down 7th Way Southwest to Campus Drive from my house. The streetlights were put in today, and I'd like to thank council for agreeing to put that into the ARPA funding, and thank the federal government for ARPA funding, because we wouldn't have those streetlights if we didn't have that funding, and thank the city. I have been in that house since 97 or 98, and the police department for years has been telling us we need more streetlights there. When I was on the HOA, the city told us we had to buy the streetlights to put them there and pay for them. We weren't able to do that, and so I'm very thankful that we have those streetlights. I hope they're on tonight and I can drive down and have the street lit. It'll be safer. You know, streetlights are a big part of public safety. And this is exciting, and for the other streetlights that are coming in throughout the city, I think this is a very good move on the part of the city council to have included this in the ARPA funding. So I'm very excited. I hope they're on tonight.
I won't dash your hopes. I'll let them not be on to dash your hopes. It's going to take us a couple weeks to get them wired. So they set them, but they're
Oh, so they're not on tonight?
Got to turn on the switch.
not unless they work some miracles.
Okay.
I think the wires still have to get pulled. We can't pull wire until the poles themselves are in. So
Oh, the poles are in.
the poles are in, right? But the wires underground, the conduit's all in. So now that we have the pole in, we can have the electricians come out and actually pull the wires to
Oh,
electrify
okay.
them. So
Okay.
I
They did go up really fast. I mean, I was gone for a couple of
Yes,
hours.
they
I
did.
came home and all 7 poles were up.
Yeah, they get set really fast once the foundations are cured. But I don't think the electricians were out there today. I think they were just setting poles.
Okay, so I won't be disappointed then.
Yeah, it's going to take us, like I said, a couple weeks to
Okay.
get everything wired up.
Well, it'll be awesome. That is a very, very dark road, and we've had things happen there that hopefully will not happen now because of light. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll call our meeting adjourned.